Welcome to Inside Scoop Live, the podcast where indie authors get personal, sharing insights about their books, their writing journeys, and their passions. I'm your host, Sherry Hoyt, and I invite you to join me for engaging conversations with both debut indie authors and seasoned veterans. Whether you're looking for your next great read or a bit of inspiration, you've come to the right place. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Alison Gieschen is here today to talk about her new novel, The Seven, a soul-searching allegorical journey where 7 humans and 7 horses confront the fate of humanity through trials that span continents, cultures, and the quiet truths that define us. Before we get started, here's the inside scoop on the author. At the heart of Alison Gieschen's journey is a deep love for storytelling and adventure. With over 25 years inspiring students as a school teacher and equestrian vaulting coach, Alison now shares her passion through her captivating books. She believes in the power of stories to connect us, teach us, and take us to new places. As she sails around the globe, Alison captures the beauty of nature and the thrill of exploration, blending her experiences into rich narratives. Join her as she weaves tales that inspire, uplift, and bring the world closer together. You can learn more about Alison and her work at alisongieschen.com. Well, hi, Alison. Welcome to Inside Scoop Live.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity for this interview.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to learning more about you and your book. So why don't you get us started? Tell us what The Seven is about and what inspired you to write a story that blends spiritual reckoning with personal transformation across so many different lives.
Well, this story is actually about a lot of different things. It's about humanity, horses, the common bonds we share, but mostly it's a story about the strength of humanity if we work together and realize what we have in common rather than focusing on our differences. And the story came to me actually in a very vivid dream. In it, there were horses. My husband and I had a horse farm for 30 years, but we sold everything we owned and are presently circumnavigating the world on our sailboat. So even after leaving our land life, horses are still often in my dreams. However, this dream was very different. I had this overwhelming sense they could see into my soul. And when I woke up, I couldn't shake the feeling. It was so powerful and real. I knew I had to write about it.
Oh, wow. I love that. I love that. I can't believe you sold everything you owned and you're living on the sea. That's wonderful. That's a story in itself. Surely
Well,
you have a memoir,
that is
right?
a story. I do have my first 5 years of our sailing journey out. Is a book, and the second one's written and waiting to be published.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. We'll talk about those another time.
Okay.
So back to the 7. I'm curious, why did you choose horses and not divine beings to deliver judgment? What made them the right moral voice for the story?
Well, as you already know, horses have been a huge part of my life. My mom had me on the back of a horse before I could walk. And as an adult, I ran a horse farm and worked with horses and people. And what I learned is that horses don't judge us the way humans do. They don't care about our status or our mistakes. They respond to presence and energy. And they know when you're afraid, when you're pretending, or when you're being authentic. So when I had the dream that inspired the 7, it made perfect sense that the horses, not divine beings, would be the ones delivering judgment because in many ways they already do. They mirror us. They see us for exactly who we are.
Mm. And isn't that the way with all animals too, right?
I've had all animals. I've had dogs, cats, like you name it, I've had it. Ferrets, even a pet skunk. But horses are just different. They're on a higher level than I think all other animals. I mean, some people arguably could say dogs are on the same level. I just never personally experienced it.
Oh, okay. Let's talk a little bit about the characters and the relationships in the book. Now, each horse is paired with a human from a very different background. How did you approach kind of designing these pairings? And what did their diversity allow you to say about humanity?
Well, I wanted the pairings between each to feel purposeful. Like their horse was the one that person needed. The people in the
Mm.
7 come from different corners of the world. Our travels have brought us to Europe, the Caribbean, Turkey, Africa. I think we've been to 46 countries so far.
Oh,
And we've
wow.
experienced so many different cultures, different belief systems, personal struggles. And yet somehow it made me realize no matter where we're from, we're all the same. And in the book, no matter where they come from, each person faces a moment, a turning point where their horse becomes a mirror. It was important for me to emphasize that all humans share the same struggles.
Yeah, I love that. And what you said earlier about recognizing our similarities rather than our differences, because I feel
Right.
like that's so relevant right now.
It's
You know,
a huge issue right now, and I feel this book is very timely.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Was there one human that felt especially close to your heart while you were writing it, or one that challenged you the most? Or maybe they're different people.
Well, all the characters are based on personal experiences. On my author website, AlisonGieschen.com, I go through the story behind the story on each person, and every person is somebody that has direct correlation to something in my life. But the one that touched me the most was Justin Barone, and his story echoes a part of my own life. Like Justin, I once stood on the edge of achieving an Olympic dream, and I know firsthand the heartbreak that comes when that dream slips away. But even more than that, Justin's bond with his horse reflects something very real from my life. My family worked with a horse that had been abused. His name was Revlon. And through love, patience, and hours of building trust, we were able to heal him. In turn, he helped our family reach an incredible milestone. He carried my daughter to the World Equestrian Games, where she represented the United States and she placed eighth in the world.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So,
That kind of
in
gives you
writing
chills.
Justin, yeah, so in writing Justin's journey, it was like opening a door to those memories. Revlon gave me a second chance at a personal dream, and Justin's horse did the same for him. And that relationship, that kind of healing, it's something incredibly special. And for me, it was an absolute gift to be able to make that part of this story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that each of your characters are based on personal experiences or people that you know, or to me that just makes them all the more authentic, and readers definitely pick up on that connection. I often hear that, while they're writing the stories, authors will say, well, my character just kind of took over. While you were writing the seven, did any of the characters kind of surprise you? Maybe someone who evolved more than expected during the writing process?
Really? Because all of these characters surprised me. I didn't have an endpoint in mind as their stories unfolded. I was writing each character developed just like people do in real life. In many ways, each of the characters transformed into people I didn't expect. Some of them didn't make their transformations until the very end of the story, but that made their stories even more dramatic.
Yeah, I love how that happens. You know, when you're
Yeah,
writing, it's like your characters kind of just take over and you're
they
just the
just
kind of like
surprise
the
the heck out of
vessel.
you.
Yeah,
Yep,
exactly. I love that. I don't know how it happens, but it does. And we're just the vessels.
absolutely.
So, before you started writing, did the story come to you fully formed through your dream, or was that just the spark? And then the full story evolved as you got deeper into the characters and the plot?
When I first began writing this story, I had no idea where it was going to lead. In fact, with all of the characters, I didn't map out the stories ahead of time. It was like watching a movie unfold in my mind, and I was just simply recording what I saw. And often I was totally shocked by the twists and turns. It was surreal, really. I'm like, holy crap, did that just happen? And the ending was the most extreme part. It took me totally by surprise. I couldn't type quickly enough to keep up with the movie playing in my head. And going back and reading it, when I read the ending, I still cry every time.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
It is. It's horrible, really. They're
Oh,
happy tears,
goodness.
I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. So the writing kind of just comes to you and you're just sitting there writing as fast as you can see the movie in your mind. Um,
Exactly.
so you have a general idea, but really no plot, no outline or anything
There
like
was
that you
zero
work from.
plot or outline. No, I just recorded the story as it played in my head.
Mm, wow. That's powerful. You also have some powerful emotional standoffs in the book, kind of moments where human and a horse don't agree on what the soul deserves. What was it like to write those scenes where judgment isn't simple or unanimous?
Those were some of the hardest and most rewarding to write. They forced me to look at the gray areas of human nature, to acknowledge that judgment isn't always black and white. I mean, we like to think that goodness is obvious and that justice is clear cut. But in reality, people are layered. We carry pain, we carry mistakes, and we even sometimes we do the wrong thing for right reasons. And so writing those standoffs between the horses and their humans was emotionally intense because the horse sees everything, not just the actions, but the motives, the regrets, love, and fear. And they don't judge on appearance or history. They judge based on what lies in the hearts of humans, and sometimes they even struggle.
Mm, wow. It's kind of scary.
Trust me, I had some very scary horses in my life.
I haven't had a lot of horses in my life, but I remember one time I was probably 10 and my dad took us horseback riding. And wouldn't you know, I got the horse that went into the water hole to get a drink and wouldn't get out, you know? It's like,
Oh, okay.
that's the end of my horse experiences. Oh, now spiritual framework and symbolism. Let's talk a little bit about that. There's a moment when the horses emerge from the forest to render judgment. Did you always envision the trial in such a symbolic, quiet form?
No, really, the entire story unfolded in a way that felt more like witnessing than creating it. I didn't
Mm,
sit down with an outline or plan the symbolism. It just kind of revealed itself as I wrote. So I was just the one chosen to write it down. But the moment the horses emerged from the forest, it still gives me chills. It was powerful, but not because it was dramatic or loud. It was powerful because it was so quiet. And at the time, I didn't recognize the symbolism. It was only afterwards when I, went back and read through the pages that I saw how many layers there were. And the forest, the silence, the gravity of those horses stepping forward, it speaks to how judgment in this story is not about spectacle, it's about truth.
yeah. Okay. Now you just mentioned it was quiet. There wasn't any thunder or lightning, just emotional shifts. Was it difficult to create tension in that matter without the traditional kind of, hoopla or courtroom type drama?
While the verdicts were quiet, no gavel slamming or dramatic declarations, there was actually a great deal of commotion from the heavens above those who were being judged. The tension didn't come from shouting, it came from something much deeper, the immense gravity of what was happening. So I didn't rely on traditional courtroom drama because this wasn't a courtroom. It was something
Right.
more ancient, more primal. And the horses weren't arguing a case. They were deciding, based on everything they had witnessed and felt, whether their human soul was worthy of continuing.
Mm. It feels like just it can be intense is not the right word. I just want to say kind of shrouded in this like mystical sense, you know? Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's fascinating. Now, your story includes very real depictions of abuse, racing, slaughterhouses, neglect. Talk about writing those scenes emotionally. How difficult were they for you?
Those scenes were some of the hardest to write. When you're as close to an animal as I am to horses, it hurts you on a visceral level to even think about the abuse they endure, let alone bring those to reality on life, life in the book. But I knew it had to be included. I didn't want to sensationalize it, but I also knew I couldn't look away from it. Horses have been an enormous part of my life. I've witnessed their strength, their vulnerability, their astonishing capacity to forgive. So, writing about their suffering, especially at the hands of humans, it wasn't just emotional, it was personal, but I
Mm.
feel it was also necessary.
Yeah, fiction plays such a big role in informing people about things like this that people of everyday, just general knowledge of horses don't understand or know about, the things that they've gone through. So I feel like fiction is a real way of getting that message out to people and making them aware of these kinds of issues as well as a good
Book
story.
and this book is entirely based on facts, all of the location, all of the breeds of horses, all of the people's occupation. I did hours and hours, while the story came fluidly to me, I researched every single detail in this story based
Mm.
on facts.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. So now tell me a little bit about that. You had your dream and then you had the story kind of in your mind and then you did the research on it to be able to fill in those gaps when you were ready to sit down and tell your story.
Yes, exactly. So I picked a character based on a location I knew intimately or had knowledge about, and their occupations. And a lot of the research has to do with their occupations. This is almost like a historical fiction book. And like in some ways, it could qualify because I go deep into the history of their cultures.
Yeah.
So when you read the book, it's an education on 7 different places around the world on probably something you've never heard about, which it made it so interesting for me to write.
Hmm. And I think that's probably what will make it very interesting for readers as well, because, like you said, there's so many layers and there so many different cultures, and then there's the horses, and then There's a lot packed into this book. I love it.
There is. Really had no clue when I was writing it that it would ever come to fruition or get pulled together. I just sat down and wrote it because I felt like I needed to.
Yeah, yeah. Many of the humans forget the trial, but something inside of them changes. Do you think people can transform without remembering? And if so, why? And if not, why?
Well, I truly hope so. I mean, I believe that throughout our lives, subtle but powerful truths are planted in us, maybe in a dream, in an encounter, through pain, or even in moments we don't consciously remember. But just because we can't recall the why doesn't mean a transformation isn't real. And that's the heart of this story. It's a message of hope that change is possible, even without fully understanding it. And this book is about that hope, not just for the seven characters, but for all of us.
So true. You weave in the seven virtues: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, and faithfulness. You already talked about how things kind of emerged as you sat down, but was there any kind of framework planned around the seven virtues?
I did not sit down with a checklist of virtues, but I did have a deep sense that I wanted each human character to reflect something meaningful, something that represented the best of who we can be, even when we were broken, because some of these people were very broken. And as each character began to take shape, I started noticing that their core traits aligned with those virtues. And by the end of the writing process, I realized the virtues weren't just themes, they were the heart of the story. And that's what made the seven feel so personal and universal at the same time.
Right. Yeah, I see that. And I'm going to back up a little bit, talking about everything that was included in the book, the layers, the depth. How many pages was it? How many pages did the final end up being? And
I
did you
think it's
cut?
like 360. The editor of my publishing company did cut a bunch of things. It would have been longer. Like one of my favorite stories about a pig got cut. Because one of the characters is totally real, and he actually came to my home and he had an adventure with a pig on my farm. And I just thought it was so precious that I put it in the book. And she's like, "Yeah, no, that's too much. We have to take that out." I'm like, "Oh, crap."
Sounds like another story.
A short story, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. I was just wondering about the total page count, because you fit a lot into that number of pages, which I think that's typical number of pages for a novel.
It's packed. It is
It's,
packed.
yeah, but in a good way, in a good way. Yeah. I love that. I love that, a book can keep me reading from page to page because it's got so much going on. And the same way you wrote it, it sounds like, is the way I like to read, just until I'm done.
Yep.
Now, your portrayal of the horses in the afterlife is very vivid and luminous. How did you imagine that space, and what shaped your vision of their spiritual form?
Well, I love this question because it touches the soul of the book. Horses have always held a kind of quiet wisdom and deep presence in my life. And growing up with horses, raising them, working with them, I always thought there was something more going on behind their eyes. You just need to look into the eye of a horse and you know there's something magical there, a knowing, a connection, almost like they're guardians of something ancient and good. So when I started imagining the seven, it felt natural that they would exist beyond this world in a form even more radiant and powerful.
Mhm.
And what shaped that vision the most was my real life bond with horses, the way they can mirror a person's energy and they seem to be able to see into your soul. And it felt right that I made this connection in a spiritual way, making them chosen creatures. In the story, it was just a next natural step, but it was my way of honoring what they've always meant to me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And some of the most powerful insights in the book do come from the horses themselves. How did you go about finding their voices, and what did you want them to reveal about humanity?
Well, giving the horses a voice felt like uncovering something that was already there, like something I always felt when I was around them. Their
Mm,
voices are an echo of how we treat them, they're a reflection of what we are feeling. It's a known fact that the human heart, if you're within 4 feet of a horse, will either speed up or slow down to match a horse's heartbeat. That's like
really?
science. Yeah. And that's why they're used for therapy and for reducing anxiety. So they actually have a magnetic energy to them. And their voices became the moral compass of the story. It reminds us that the heart of humanity is not always found in power or status, but in how we treat one another, how we rise after we fall, and how we keep showing up with hope.
Yeah, wow. I didn't know that. That's amazing. Now, you touch on modern disconnection through technology, greed, and celebrity. What critiques of today's world felt most important for this story?
That theme of disconnection, well, was something that kept rising to the surface as I wrote the seven. I didn't set out to critique the modern world, but as I dug deeper into the characters' lives, I couldn't ignore the pattern. I mean, technology, greed, fame, and even our pursuit of success can pull us away from what really matters. We all know that's a common theme in today's society. And
Hmm.
one of the biggest topics I wanted to explore was how easily we've replaced real connections with artificial substitutes. We scroll instead of speak. We perform by talking about what we think is most acceptable instead of how we really feel. We're
Mm-hmm.
bombarded with images of perfection, but I think the human race is lonelier than ever. I wanted to show how each character, despite their vastly different backgrounds, was wrestling with the same form of isolation or emptiness, and how their connection with a horse, something real and rooted, started to make that unravel.
Yeah, yeah. Gosh, I know it's such a different world from when I grew up, certainly.
Exactly.
You see all those on social media, of course, but you see all these things like, "Mom, did your parents really let you go out and ride your bike all around the neighborhood until dark?" Yep.
Yes, they did.
Uh, let's talk about a moment that anchored the story for you. Was there a particular scene that kind of brought everything into focus emotionally?
Absolutely. The moment that anchored the entire story for me was when each character entered heaven. Those scenes were powerful to write because they stripped everything away, all the titles, the failures, the achievements, the defenses, and they revealed the raw, unfiltered truth behind each soul. And each person's reaction was so telling. Some stepped forward with awe, others with fear, some with disbelief. But in that moment, without the noise of the world, their true essence came to light, and you could see who they really were. Not how the world defined them, but who they were at their core. And that was emotional for me because I realized I wasn't just telling a story about seven people, I was telling a story about all of us.
Hmm. Wow. Wow. You're a very good storyteller,
Why, thank
even
you.
even in conversation. We're talking to each other casually, but the way that you are answering the questions to me is like I can tell you that you're just a very good storyteller,
Oh, thank you.
and
That's
and
a really
that's
good compliment.
well, that's kind of how storytelling started, right? I mean, we didn't write
Right.
it down at first. We told stories down through the ages, and my
Well,
grandmother told me
I
stories, and
I understood the power of storytelling as a third grade teacher. I was also a teacher. And
ah.
I could take a room of 23 unruly kids and I could sit down and quietly tell a story, and every one of them would be silent, totally enraptured. And I just had them like putty. And it was just amazing. The power of just simply sitting down and telling them a story was just, it was amazing.
I love that. Yeah, that's powerful. Oh. Now, the father instructs the humans to share a memory or an apology with their horse. Was that moment of direct accountability essential, you feel?
Up until that point, so much of their journey had been about being observed by the horse, by the father, by the son. But in that moment, the humans had to speak. They had to confront what they had buried, what they were proud of, and what they wished they could take back. And it bared their true feelings, no filters, no justification, just the raw truth of their relationship with their horse.
Wow. You mentioned earlier reading the ending and still having
Crying. That's
tears,
embarrassing.
yes.
A little
And
embarrassing there.
no, no, not at all. But I guess what I'm asking is, without giving anything away, noted the story ends with a strong emotional note. What kind of feeling or reflections do you hope readers will carry with them after finishing the book?
I feel that so many people today have become disconnected from the natural world. We move so fast, we consume without thought, we often forget that we're part of something bigger. And I wanted this book to be a reminder that the most important things are often the simplest: kindness, humility, love, and most of all, having a deep respect for this planet that we call home. So if the seven can help someone slow down, reconnect with what matters, or even just look at an animal or a sunset with a little more reverence, then I feel like it's done its job. This is a book that is really a love letter to the earth and to the creatures who share it with us.
Hmm. That's beautiful. Well, Allison, is there anything else you wanted to add today?
Well, I do have a magical mermaid tale in the works called Sienna. My daughter's middle name is Ariel, after the Little Mermaid, and it's being brought to life by an award-winning illustrator from England. And it's an early chapter book, so that's hopefully going to be published in the next month or so.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
also, I actually have fully written the sequel to our first ocean journey, Riding the Waves of Reality, Tales of Turmoil and Triumph. And this one takes place in the Mediterranean, is full of really incredible destinations and amazing adventures. And of course, the kind of chaos you can only have living on a sailboat. And I'm also a prolific blogger, so I regularly update our adventures on sailmates.org, my website. And we're preparing to leave for a 30-plus day passage across the Pacific. And as we sail into these totally remote islands of the French Polynesians, I can already feel the stories forming. There's so much
Ah.
beauty, mystery, and culture there. I just can't wait to share it. So this next chapter, it's going to be epic.
It sounds like it. Wow. I can't imagine you ever having time to write. That's, you
No,
know.
that's all I have is time to write. I mean, when you're out to sea for 30 days, that's all. You just got a
Oh,
lot of time to
okay.
write.
Okay. Okay. Nice, nice. Well, enjoy your trip, and we'll have to check out your blog to learn, all about your adventures. And thank you so much, Allison, for joining me on the show today and sharing a little bit more about yourself and your work.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for joining me today for my interview with Alison Gieschen, author of The Seven. Learn more about Alison and connect with her at AlisonGieschen.com. And be sure to check out our other interviews at InsideScoopLive.com.